Okay, so we've reported our deer and we got it back home now, and now it's time to go ahead and start skinning him and cooling him off. Of course, the things that make your meat spoil is when it's warm, when it's wet, or when it's dirty. So we want to try and keep our deer as cool and dry and clean as we can, and that only makes sense. Now that we've got him home and everything's still fairly fresh, we'll deal with skinning them and we'll take care of everything right here. That's kind of the best thing to do next. What I like to do is I'll go right next to his parts right here, and I'll make a cut just in the skin underneath. So we'll nice and carefully just work our way up through there. Try not to get into the meat. Just cut the skin open. Just like that. And then we'll just gently open that up, and his parts will just kind of swing out of the way. Like so. Now I'll go around to the rear, and we'll continue right up through to the opening, trying not to cut hair too much. It's important not to get hair all over your meat, so I try and cut with the hair so that I'm not cutting it off, it just follows. And we'll open it up. And again, we'll cut right next to it and come right up to the edge of his tail. Now, what I find is most easiest, especially when you're skinning deer, is to start at the top and work your way down. All the meat and everything is covered nicely by all this hide. So if we start right around his hock, and there's really no meat in the bottom part of his leg right there, so we'll skin right around it. And because he's hanging by one leg, this big tendon, the Achilles tendon in the back, we want to be very careful of that tendon and not cut it, because the whole deer could fall. And especially like with the concrete and the antlers, you want to watch out for that. I like to hang him up by one leg because it allows me to work on the outside leg first. And generally what I'll do is I'll make a cut in the skin all the way around, and then I'll work my way down to the end cut, and then open that whole leg up and drop it down just a little bit. Then I'll rehook my hook over there and then do the same thing to this side. And when I get done, he's hanging by the one leg, but it allows me to get it the height and that I like, and especially with having power winch is nice. By skinning from the top down, all the hair will now work its way down, and I basically pull the whole thing down so that the meat will remain as hair-free as possible. We'll work our way up through it. And the deer always skin the easiest when they're nice and warm and fresh. If it's frozen or outdoors, you may have to warm it up a little bit. And your hands will get cold. This can be a cold job on your hands sometimes in Vermont in the winter time when we're in the fall, beginning of the winter when we're deer hunting. Now once we've made our ring cut and we've gone all the way around, we've opened it up some. Now I just like to slide my knife right underneath the skin and come out and make a cut without opening it up too much. Just make a slit all the way down through. And work your way right over to your side cut. Take your time, not a hurry at all. Like I said, we don't have to open it up a lot because it'll get a lot of hair and everything. Once we've got it and opened it up, we can just kind of pull and things will open up. It may stop every now and then and you'll have to help it along. That fascia that helps hold the hide on will stop you every now and then. But just kind of roll the hair under and just think keeping it clean as you go. if while you're skinning you happen to make a little small cut in the meat or something like that, doesn't hurt a thing. I like to clean my knife in between, jobs. If I'm gutting it out and then later on I'm going to skin it, clean your knife in case you got some bacteria or something on it. It's nice to keep that as clean as you can. There usually is quite a bit of fat between the skin and the muscle, and he has a little bit of fat here. Doesn't hurt if there's a little bit of meat or fat on the hide, and it doesn't really hurt too much if you ended up cutting a hole in it or something like that. The biggest thing is just to kind of keep the hair off the meat as best you can. If you're planning on keeping the hide, take your time. Try and cut everything centered real nicely on each side so that when it opens up and flattens out, it'll be nice and even and it'll look good. Now, as we get to his parts and pieces, right here in the center is the tube that goes back through and goes to the bladder on the inside. Because the bladder is cupped like this and it's hooked on the inside, we can now just take that and cut it right off. And we're not going to get urine on anything. That cup is empty and it's on the inside of the pelvis, so it won't hurt a thing. And we'll just tip this right off to the side and it'll come right off with the hide. Just like so. Learning is easy and fun. The inside of the pelvis that holds the two hindquarters there's no meat or anything edible on the inside of the pelvis. And when the hindquarter is removed from the pelvis, that bladder could stay right inside of there, and we're going to be chucking the pelvis so that can stay right inside of it. It's all contained. It's not going to be a problem, and we'll just take that, and when it comes time to go, that'll go right straight into the trash, and we won't ever have to cut it or dump it or worry about spilling it or anything like that. If the deer was going to hang for a long period of time, we've gotten to this right off the bat, but if the deer were going to hang for a long period of time, it'd be good to get that out of there. All you do is just cut in a circle right around everything and then pull it all. Or if you can cut it and then work it from the other direction, it's basically a big tube, and if you clean out the inside and slide it out, you can take it right out in your hand and get rid of it. It'd be a good idea to do it. If you were going to bring your deer to a meat cutter, that'd be a good idea. He'll want that out of there. Because we're going to be processing the whole thing ourselves right here, we don't have to worry about that. We'll cut through his tailbone, and now we've got one whole side dismantled. Now we'll take him down and we'll lay him right on this side, and I'll put my hook over here. And we can do the same to the other side. Keep it at a nice working height. Extra set of hands to help hold things is always nice. The children, the kids, my boys would always love to be holding all the parts and pieces and watching me do it. A deer has a lot of gifts besides food, and you can learn so much and become part of a really cool system. There's a lot of biology and a lot of neat things to learn, and it helps you develop a relationship with your food, and that's a good thing. The fat that's in a lot of the meat tends to be where some of the gamey deer flavor taste might come from, I suppose, that some people will describe. And I generally make sure and get as much of the fat off the meat before I cook it. Myself, I don't care to have too much of the fat on it, but it certainly doesn't hurt. But everybody's different. Their tastes are different. As you do this, you'll learn what parts you like and don't like. A lot of people have different methods or different little tricks to doing it. There's something to be learned from everyone. Become a student of deer. And this is definitely a big part of it. This is an enjoyable part of it. This is where I don't like to be in a hurry. I want to take my time because you don't get to do it every day, and it's such a privilege. And Mother Nature gave you such a gift that you want to make good use of it. Now, as you come around the hindquarter and the hindquarter ends, you'll start seeing a little bit more fat, especially right in front of the hindquarter right there. And determining where the fat and the meat and everything come together are a little bit tougher. Everything's a little bit mushier there. It's a little bit different of a shape. There will be some like a little bit of flank muscle right there. That's what they use that to shake their skin and make the flies go away. That muscle's pretty developed right there. It's kind of cool. There's usually not quite enough meat to save there, so I normally don't save that. It's just a thin layer of about 1/8 of an inch, and that I usually let that come right off with the hide itself. Not that you couldn't save every little bit if you wanted to. You can be as fussy as you like, or not so fussy. That'll be up to you. I try and utilize as much as I can. And same thing here. Start getting near the fat. This fat that's along the hindquarters and the back and inside of the guts along the kidney area there, that's all very important to the deer to help them get through in a tough winter. So as we skin forward, we just kind of work our way right around. You can pull on it some, and it'll come ahead a little bit at a time. I like to just kind of ball it up and hold it and then push down on it. Again, we're rolling the hair underneath and having the flesh side of the hide out. Just kind of keeping things even as we go. Another reason that hanging it by one leg makes it a little handy. It spins a little easier. Now once we get down to the breastbone, and we're right where we started to gut, this was a buck and we were going to mount it, this is where I would take the hide and I would just trim, right along right here and cut that whole rear half of the hide off right there. And that will put us about 6 or 8 inches behind the front legs. Then I just continue skinning and then cut the head off in a tube, and it would be ready for a cape, would be all ready for your taxidermist. We won't be mounting him, so we'll just continue on down through like we've been doing. Now, as we start getting to the front shoulder, if we grab onto it, we can see where things are. His shoulder blade, his scapula, is right here. And it's very easy to start skinning behind the front leg. And then this shoulder isn't held on by anything. It's only muscles. So it's very easy to cut behind it, and then the whole leg will come right off of the hide. My very first deer, that's what I did. I went right into that crotch and skun that out, and the whole leg came off, and I thought I'd screwed things up, and I didn't. It didn't hurt anything. That's where you naturally cut it anyway. But for skinning it out and bringing it to your meat cutter, you want to make sure that you're working on staying on the outside of that. Now, when we get to the front leg and we're kind of getting to his elbow here, I'll just take my knife and I'll cut straight out through like this. Just kind of open that up just a whisker. See if we can get things cut here. Knife isn't quite what it was a little while ago. And I'll cut right towards his elbow. Just like so. Again, hair on the outside, continue rolling it. You can see a little bit of bruising here. This is where the bullet went through. You can expect that. Now what I'll do is I'll continue right down the back of his leg to his knee. So we'll just keep cutting like we were, like almost pretty much like we did on the back leg. We'll work our way right down to his knee. Then we'll catch the other side up. You'll get a little head on one side and then you'll have to catch up. Oftentimes you'll find the bullet just in underneath the skin. It'll go in one side, and sometimes that won't pass all the way through, and it'll be just in underneath the skin sometimes, or just underneath. It's pretty common. And we'll just cut on the inside of it, just a whisker, and follow his breastbone. Work our way right down to that knee joint. Each side until it comes together. Then we can just take the skin and cut it right off, right at the knee. Then I go on the back side and I'll cut through the knee joint itself and onto the ligament on the side. You can use a hacksaw or a meat saw and just cut the bone right off if you wanted to. Myself, I know where to cut. It's not a big deal. Learn how the knee goes together and you can just cut it and break it right off. And then we'll continue with the brisket. This will be a piece that will have a lot of fat on it, and a lot of times this is an indication of how the deer is done over the summer. You like to see, especially some of the does that don't go too crazy running around breeding. They only breed for just 3-4 days and then they're done, so they don't expend a lot of their energy during the rut. And we like to see about 3/4 of an inch of fat on their sternum. Come November, that's a good sign that they've had a good summer and they're going into winter in pretty decent shape. Now we're just going to work our way right down the neck and leave everything in a tube. It will generally be a little cooler here. The meat's had a chance to cool because it's a smaller area, and it's usually the hide is a little stiffer and comes off just a little bit tougher. It tends to stick to the meat just a little bit more, and you'll have to just take your time and just keep circling and pulling and just slowly keep working it away, cutting at the fascia. There's another bullet hole there. By keeping the hide in a tube, it makes for no seam on your mount if you are going to mount it. If it's a little bit of a struggle and you're not going to be mounting it, you can take your knife and cut into the back of it down the neck right here and open that up, and sometimes that makes it a little easier to skin. But by keeping it this way and tubing it, it actually keeps it the cleanest it could possibly be, and there's no hair getting on any of your meat. Everything looks really nice and clean and easy to do. A lot of the neck meat can be stews, roasts. You can actually make steaks out of it. It's often good for a burger or sausage of some kind. The boys and I make a lot of jerky out of it. The muscles in the neck are fairly small muscles that are all intertwined, so your steaks have a lot of small areas of I want to say good size grain to it, and it twists some, so it tends to be a little bit tougher. And I think probably the majority of the people will grind it and make burger and sausage out of it, out of the neck part. The shank portion of the deer, this is often same thing, stew meat, or we make jerky out of that sometimes. Most of the steaks, I like to try and cut them cross grain, and you can see which way the muscles go. So I'll cut steaks cross grain right across, and the front shoulder can be some steaks. The scapula is this great big bone, and it's right on top right here. When you're archery hunting, of course, you want to shoot in here and keep it away from this great big bone that's underneath right here. And that section right there, I'd cut that right out. We can take the whole hind quarter off and the front quarter off, and a little later here, and we'll show you how to take that apart. But it can be some steaks, some stew meat, things like that. Myself, I like my steaks nice and small and fairly thin. Venison can be overcooked fairly easy, so I try to keep it thin and put it in a hot frying pan and real quick on each side and cook it thorough enough to take care of business, but also not overcook it. There's lots of recipes and marinades and things that are really excellent. Deer meat done right is just, it's excellent, excellent. Now you can take a Sawzall and cut it right off, or a meat saw. The other thing you can do is take your knife and just cut right through everything. Cut all your tendons, your muscles, the trachea, and all of that. Just cut everything off so that it's just the bone holding it. Then I usually, if I have an assistant, he holds onto the other side, and I just twist and the whole head will come off, right? Just boom, it comes right off. Now we've got our entire cape, or even the whole hide, all in one piece with the head still in it. It can go right into the freezer, or it can go to your taxidermist. If you're at home and you just want to save the antlers, I like to cut straight down in between the eyeball and the two horns, perpendicular to the nose, and I'll cut down through to about here, then cut rearward and come out through the back of that, and the horns will be pretty close to going on the wall right there. You can clean all the hide off them and clean them up some. Now we've pretty much got the entire deer all ready to go to your meat cutter. Generally what I do is I have some real thin painter's plastic, and I'll wrap them in plastic. You want to leave your tag attached to the carcass, because that's for the meat. It's a transportation tag, so that'll have to go to the meat cutter with it. So I take my tag. Usually I keep my tag on the deer's ear, and I put a safety pin through it, and I tag it. I put it right inside and squish it and pin it together. Then when I'm done, I'll take it right off and pin it right onto the meat, and it can follow the meat to the meat cutter. And there you have it.